Packers fans out here to stay. Cheeseheads green and gold all day. Jordan Love lead us to the bay. Every game we find a way. Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know. Green and gold gonna glow. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown.
Aloha and welcome back to your regularly scheduled programming of Ohana Packers Edition. We are shifting gears, getting back into the regular flow of things as the Packers approach training camp. So I'm going to jump back into the pilot seat until Joe sees fit that he needs to bump me out of it because this episode goes off the rails or not. But Joe, we're back mostly to usual. The Packers are on the eve of training camp, and as you noted, things have been all quiet. Yes, we'll talk about the Devonte Wyatt extension. We'll expand upon my impromptu TikTok video about that. But otherwise, there really hasn't been anything else that's happened between our last episode and the start of training camp. So, thoughts going into the 2026 training camp for you?
Well, like I said before we started recording, that it's kind of weird because it seemed like every year the Packers would, 2 days before the start of training camp, would like make some weird transaction where they would cut some random guy from the roster and then they would bring in another random guy just to shake things up. Kind of like when they talk about you punish one right off the bat just to show the rest of them that this is what you're capable of. That's kind of what the process is with the Packers in years past. But here we are recording 2 days out from. Mike and I are trying to figure this. It's the 28th that they start camp, so they should be starting to show up tomorrow, which is the 27th, because they show up and they do all their pre-camp testing, physicals, stuff like that, and then they'll go into camp the next day. And like Mike said, outside of the Wyatt extension, we're kind of all quiet on the Cheesehead front. So yeah, I mean it's that time of year again. Somebody posted on the Elon machine that this is like the last Sunday without football until next year. So, it's that time. It's crazy how fast this year has gone, though.
Yep, it is. And like you mentioned, they tend to add or subtract someone. I do not believe that's going to be, there was the rumor about a week or a week and a half ago that possibly it would be Jadeveon Clowney. The Packers have never made that kind of move when it gets disclosed that far ahead of time. It's more like, not necessarily always level of player, but it's more like the Peppers move where it just came out of not just left field, it came out of left field from the stadium 2 states over kind of thing. So, they might sign Clowney at some point, but I don't think it'll be the next move because they don't publicly telegraph those kind of things. You know what I mean? Like the only thing they publicly will telegraph is when they're expected to extend a player, and even then, that's it can be a little more hit and miss than they let on. But yeah, we'll see where it goes.
I'm kind of curious at if he doesn't get signed before the regular season, if he could end up as like a practice squad signing. I don't know how the rules are anymore. I know they can sign veterans and that to the practice squad, but I wonder if that may be the case where they sign them to the practice squad and just roll with the guys they have for the moment just to see, what the possibilities are. And then that way he can slow roll into the system, and that I did see that it was kind of interesting that Josh Sweat ended up on the PUP list in Arizona, so that could be a whole reason why that. I know you kind of speculated that the trade talk kind of tailed off after the Josh Jacobs situation, but I wonder if it's that something came up in med records, because it's kind of weird that you just all of a sudden end up on the PUP list.
Yeah, very odd. And, it's not like some kind of off-season training thing, because those guys usually end up on the NFI non-football injury list. Even though you're training for the football season, they NFI those guys because you did. I think it's in the fine print that it's like you only go on PUP if it's something that's deemed from the previous season, kind of, or like a career issue, not like I hurt my back lifting weights for the upcoming season and stuff. So, yeah, like you said, very curious timing. To me, it does I agree with you. It does make you wonder, like, if there are just trade talks continuing to rumble and stuff. I think what it's shown is that the league agrees with what was reported about whether it was Green Bay or the Eagles, that like they were the two at the head of the table in trade talks for Sweat, and they both kind of told Arizona to stick it in terms of what Arizona was looking for in a trade. And like, on one hand, sure, you're Arizona, they're the one with the commodity. They set the term, they have some measure of setting the terms. But at the same time, every team in the league is like, you're on the road to nowhere. The Cardinals, that is, you're on the road to nowhere. They don't want to be on the road to nowhere paying buku bucks to a guy who's, only going to be in his 30s by the time they're really seriously ready to contend and stuff. So, 31 teams basically called Arizona's bluff and said, all right, cool, like, play it out. And yeah, it'll just be really interesting. Yeah,
they just gave Brissett a 1-year extension with the Rays. I just saw that today too. So I'm really I have no clue what the plans are down there.
Yep, but this is not a Packers podcast. This is a Packers podcast. This is not a Cardinals podcast. So we will speculate now only on the players who are currently on the Green Bay Packers. And as I was about to say, like Joe said, no, this was what Joe and I were discussing prior to pressing record on this episode. We're going to just go into the hot items that the Packers are looking to iron out as training camp goes along. We touched on some of those on our previous episode, but I think we'll go a little more in depth in terms of basically the lines of scrimmage are going to be the hot spot. Both sides of the line of scrimmage are going to be the hot spots for the Packers. Linebacker has some ironing out. Running back, it kind of is funny that on both sides of the ball, it's offensive, defensive line, linebacker, and running back are the two, or the four position rooms, and they're kind of like their mirror images on opposite sides of the ball. But those are four of the position groups that have some of the biggest question marks going into camp, whether at the starting positions or at the heavy rotation, secondary contributor spots. And then obviously the other big one is cornerback, because it'll just be really interesting to see who the top four is and how that shifts as the season moves along. So, Grand Inquisitor, where would you like to start?
Well, let's just go ahead and do the Devonte Wyatt signing. That way we can just go ahead and get the defensive line off of there.
Yeah.
So the big news was, and Mike did throw out a quick TikTok video for it, the Packers signed Devonte Wyatt to a 3-year, $57 million contract extension, $20 million signing bonus. I think you speculated in one of our group chats if this was an add-on to the 5th year, and I'm pretty sure it is. That's why they didn't give him a 4-year contract. It was just an add-on to the 5th year option. Does give him more money, but this is another one of those deals that, similar to the Reed and the Watson one, where it doesn't make him like the highest paid player in the league, but it gives him a good chunk of money and still is basically it's Rust Ball magic. still gives the Packers room to do other things. I am kind of surprised that it was Wyatt before Tucker, so I'm wondering if Tucker's camp is really playing hardball with Russ Ball. Pardon the pun on that one. Um, but and the reason I say that is because we know Tucker had the ACL injury, and usually players can come back pretty good from the ACL. I mean, you have your good ones, you have your bad ones. Jordy Nelson obviously came back and became comeback player of the year after his ACL injury. Rashawn Gary wasn't really the same after his injury. But this is per friend of shows, Rob Domofsky's article for ESPN after the signing, that Devonte suffered a season-ending broken fibula and torn ligaments in his ankle. So that's a little bit more serious than just a plain ACL injury. So if they really think Devontae's back, Devonte is going to be coming back healthy and not have any issues, then, like I said, it makes you wonder if Tucker's camp is really pushing that they want this big money contract for him, because he relatively speaking had the lesser of the injuries compared to what Devonte suffered. So anyway, with Devonte, he's getting a good chunk of money. I do have to fact check a little bit of Rob's article, because it says the Packers expect Wyatt to be a key figure in new defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon's scheme, which will switch to a 3-4 defensive front after playing a 4-3 in Wyatt's first 4 seasons. I'm sorry, Rob, but Wyatt was in a 3-4 early on, and I would want to say his rookie year, because he was still under the Joe Barry system, because that was the same draft as Quay, and we know it was Joe Barry's system that Quay was drafted into. So I think, if my mind is working right, that Halfley was only in Green Bay for 2 seasons.
Yep.
So there's no way he played in a 4-3 for all 4 years of his career. But that's ticky-tacky. But anyway, what are you thinking of the Devonte signing?
Yeah, I agree with, like, it is Russ Ball magic, because you sign this deal and he becomes the 18th, I think it was, I think if I'm counting it correctly on Over the Cap, he's the 18th highest paid defensive tackle by, if you go by the annual rate of his deal, and then that drops even further if it is a, that's just based on, dividing 57 by 3. He's not making $20 million a year. He's 18th in terms of overall earning over the course of that contract. And if it is, those 3 years are tacked on to, like, turn his 5th-year option into the first of a 4-year contract kind of thing, then that number drops even further, because his 5th-year option is like 12 million, 12 and change. So, and I still haven't seen either Spot Track or Over the Cap list out which way that it's going. The other thing I kind of suppose, because Green Bay doesn't tend to go over, if you divide out guaranteed money as a percentage of the new contract, they don't tend to pass 30%. But what I did wonder is if they went a little higher, because to move money out of 2026, his 2026 cap hit, you, if I remember it correctly, you can't make guaranteed money disappear when you do, like, contract extensions. You can just shift around what kind of guaranteed money it is, and that's how you lower a cap hit like this 5th-year option one, where the money is fully guaranteed, is like you would have to absorb that 12 million into your new 20 million cap hit so that you could spread it out over the 3 years or whatever. So I do think that is the one part where signing Wyatt to this extension makes a little sense before the Kraft one, because you can move around his 2026 cap hit to create that much more room that you can sign Kraft's deal to you move some of Wyatt's cap hit out to extend Kraft, to help extend Kraft now and stuff. So whole bunch of deck chairs are sliding around on top and stuff, so we'll see where it all lands. as I said in the TikTok and we said in the previous episode, the Kraft deal is still a when, not if ordeal, and it's just a matter of when all sides are in agreement. But they're at absolute worst, this is gonna be like when Bakhtiari signed his in like October or something like that, and so they're not gonna let this get too far. It's not gonna get to where they're gonna have to franchise tag Kraft next offseason. They're gonna nip it in the butt far before then. But
No, I
yeah,
believe the same thing. They're going to have one. With both of them coming off injuries, I figured it would have been a lot safer to sign Kraft to his
Yeah.
extension than Devonte with the injuries that he's got going on there. And then if you go by Rob's article, Devontae's signed through the 2029 season, so this is a tack on.
oh, there you go
to,
then. I missed that part of it. Yeah.
To his fifth-year option. So
There you go. And then the other side of it too, you kind of alluded to it, is I do wonder where if Trey McBride hasn't signed his extension, if they would have gotten crap, but whoever signed first was going to kind of reset, expectations for the rest of the market. So once McBride signed, it's like, okay, that sets a new line of demarcation for Kraft's camp to shoot for, kind of thing. So it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out, but they're going to get it done. But like you said, we'll use the Wyatt contract to roll into our defensive line preview. So, as you noted, Wyatt's going to be one of the cornerstones of the Packers' defensive front going into the 2026 season under Gannon's system. We can hem and haw over what kind of front they're going to be in. Let me just say, the moment that they need to be in sub-package, it doesn't matter if their base is a 3-4 or 4-3, because they're not going to play either one of those against sub-package requiring offensive personnel packages. So overall, what they line up in base is kind of a moot point, in my opinion. It's whatever, but what you would like, and they're going to need to see, because Parsons is, he's been pretty steady on it that he's going to start the season on PUP, so he's going to miss the first 4 games at minimum. And, for all his faults as a consistent pass rusher, you are down your other starting defensive end in Rashawn Gary. And then it's a bunch of question marks at defensive tackle, because Wyatt's coming off the injury. Brinson flashed at times, but he was still a rookie who needs to improve. McClellan is a touted prospect, but he's a rookie this season. And, I know they signed Hargrave, but he's another year older. How much are you really going to expect to get out of him this season? So, a lot of questions in the room. And Lucas, can he be the guy that he was looking to be, September, October of last season before he broke his foot? So, a lot of question marks.
Now, if you go by what I've seen on Twitter, he's on the trajectory of Trey Hendrickson. Because if you go through, if this person did their stuff right, and I'm not sure where it's at, I should have pulled it up before this. Lucas's stats are very similar to what Hendrickson's was going into year 4. So, if you're going by that, then, he could have this big breakout this season. But you also forgot Big Sleepy, Nazir. I still do have hopes for Jonathan Ford. If they do run a 3-4 more than a 4-3, I think having a big beefy guy like Jonathan Ford, 6'5", 338, would help out a lot as a nose tackle. I'm still not sold completely on them being a true 3-4 system, just because looking at it, they don't have the personnel to be a true 3-4 system. They really don't have a true nose tackle other than, like I said, Jonathan Ford's a big beefy guy. Brinson is a big-ish guy. Stackhouse is your other one that is above the 310 mark. So they really don't have that big beefy nose tackle that you would prefer in a 3-4 system, but they have a lot of guys that would be perfect for interior defensive tackles for a 4-3. So I'm still not, and it kind of would be a little bit weird that they signed Javon Hargrave to with Jonathan Gannon when knowing that Gannon's 4-3 was the system that Hargrave was better in Philadelphia. But there are a lot of hopes and dreams for it, and let's kind of break down the defensive tackles separate from the edges, because edge is going to be a completely different beast. So just looking at the defensive tackles, if they go for a 3-4, you got to figure Brooks, Hargrave, and Wyatt are your guys that are going to mainly rotate in at end. Brinson, Ford, and Stackhouse are your big beefy guys that you're going to put in as nose tackle. So right now doesn't look great, but and I forgot McClellan. McClellan's probably going to be more of a in than a nose tackle, but probably could be a nose tackle because, relatively speaking, he's a little bit undersized compared to the other guys. He's 6'3", 313. The other guys are all 6'5", and 320 plus. So I would think McClellan could be a little bit more of a in than a tackle, but I don't know. Right now, there's a lot of question marks. These are just guys that are currently on the roster. You got Jordan Riley that who knows if he's going to be back or not, because they have, as far as I know, they still haven't decided on their pup lists and things like that. That'll probably get figured out tomorrow. So that's probably the biggest question mark on the defense right now, is that defensive tackle room outside of the edge part of it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because, like, I know some people be like, well, if they play 3-4, they're going to need more defensive tackles, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But as I kind of pointed out earlier in the episode, it's like, how much 3-4 are you really expecting to play this season? Like, who are the teams that are really going to force you to play base out of this thing? And then on top of it,
on the opposite, to kind of go back on that, is kind of on the opposite end. Even if they don't play, if they play in the nickel and all that, who are going to be the guys that you're going to rely on to be the down linemen?
And that's the thing is, like,
nickel.
Yeah, and like you said, the thing is 3-4, you almost need more specialized guys because you do need like the stocky nose tackle. And I actually think Brinson is more of a 5 tech in a 3-4 because he's got the long arms, he's got the height. He's kind of built like Aaron Smith was for the Steelers. And then like McClellan, like you said, he's kind of in between where like he's not as stocky as some of the big like nose tackles of years past have been, but then Kenny Clark at his best years was a 6'3", 314 nose tackle in Capers and Barry and stuff's 3-4 base defenses. So, geez, they'll cross that bridge when they get to it. But yeah, I think what you kind of saw last year was they, like you kind of noted to earlier, is like they kept Stackhouse around in the hopes that he could be a contributor, but it's like, if you're a guy who can't contribute as a pass rusher, but you're not good enough as a run stopper to demand a double team, what are you really doing on this? How are you really helping this roster? And it's gonna, the bulk of the improvement from this group is gonna be, is Wyatt gonna be the guy he was before his injury last year? How much does Hargrave still have in the tank? And what kind of leaps are Brooks and McClellan, or Brooks and Brinson gonna take? And then the wild card in there is, can McClellan give you 10 solid to good snaps a game? Because if 4 of those 5 are yeses, it'll be a good defensive tackle rotation, and you just backfill the last position or two with one of Ford, Stackhouse, like you said, Riley is probably starting the season on PUP because he blew his knee out like later than Parsons did. So it's almost a guarantee he's starting the season on IR. So
Was it a knee for him?
I thought it was. I thought it was his ACL. Or let me hold
For
on.
some reason, Achilles stuck in my mind.
It was something bad like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I know it was a lower body injury, but for some
Yeah,
reason
hold on.
Achilles is sticking in my mind.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It was an Achilles injury. So yeah, even more so. He's gonna be on PUP. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's starting the season on PUP. So yeah, like it'll be really interesting to see what they've got in that defensive tackle room. But like I said, the guys that really are gonna matter this season are Wyatt, Hargrave, who are probably gonna be your two like primary starters. Whether they're either gonna be two of the three starters in the 3-4, or you're gonna if you're in a 4-3 or a nickel dime sub package group, they're gonna be your two starting defensive tackles, and then behind them some combination of Brooks and Brinson, and then they're going to give McClellan as many bites at the apple as they can early and often, because you gotta, it's that whole, it might be only 5 to 10 snaps, but you want those to be good 5 to 10 really good snaps by the end of the season. Like, yeah, we can mention Kenny Clark ad nauseum, but Kenny Clark's first big play really wasn't until he got that big tackle for loss in the playoffs, and that's what it is like rookie defensive tackles tend to suck. Like that's just kind of the general trend, because there is a physical athletic uptick that's hard to simulate in practice when you jump from college to the NFL. So
And they're going up against guys that have been in the league for
Yes, exactly.
years and know how to, legally get away with things that
Yep.
you might not have been able to in the college ranks.
Yep. You're no longer the big man on campus. So that uptick, it'll be really interesting to see how McClellan is able to handle it. But it's not, the good thing is that they're not solely relying on him to buttress the room. They have come in with guys who are being expected to take a leap, and Hargrave was a good offseason signing for the team. So I think the room is worlds better than where it was last season. It still has question marks, but it's a lot better situation than it was last season, where it was kind of like, well, it wasn't a great room with Kenny, and yeah, you do the Parsons trade over and over, but it's like, okay, it's Wyatt and a bunch of hopes, kind of. Like, that's really how the defensive tackle room was looking going into last season. So, anything else, or you want to move on to the edge room?
We can slide into the edge room real quick. I think we've covered the defensive tackle, because I'm looking at him right now, and this is another, if you wanted to put on your tinfoil hat and go into conspiracy mode with old Iowa Joe over here, this is where you can say that it still doesn't make sense that they're going to go into a 3-4 system, because you look at the guys that they currently have listed in their edge room. All right, I'm going to go through and list them all off. So if anybody wants to skip forward like 10 seconds and you'll get to our points. But Brenton Cox, 6'4", 250. Dennis Sutton, 6'5", 256. Najulik Kelly, the UDFA from UCF, 6'5", 263. Aaron Mosby, 6'3", 250. Colin Oliver, 6'2", 240. Micah Parsons, 6'3", 250. Baron Sorrell, 6'3", 256. And Lucas Van Ness, 6'5", 272. What's the common factor that you see there? They're all undersized edge rushers for a 3-4 defense. So the Packers have slowly... It's hard for me to believe that the Packers, there for the longest time, stuck with their 6'5", 270-plus edge rushers. Now all of a sudden they've switched, and that was in their 3-4. Now all of a sudden they've went the complete opposite way to move to a 4-3 style defense with these smaller quicker edge rushers, and now we're going to go back to a 3-4 automatically. Not with these small ass, well, not small, but these lighter edge rushers. And because the thing is with 3-4 edge rushers, you want a little bit more beef on them because they have to do the job of basically like two guys.
Yep.
Because you're missing that one extra lineman for them to go after. So that's another thing in the conspiracy of I'm not fully sold on them being a complete 3-4 defense. Now, with that being said, I'm not as down on this edge rushing group as a lot of people are. Are there a lot of names on here that are going to scare people? No, because they're all relatively young and unproven guys. Micah Parsons is the outlier. He's the main guy. He's going to be the star. But when does he come back? And when he comes back, is he going to be on a pitch count? Is he going to be able to go full bore? But Baron Sorrell, in his limited snaps last year, he seemed to be flashing often and looked pretty good. Lucas Van Ness, before the foot injury, he was looking very, very good. Colin Oliver only really got the one game last year, and you can kind of question whether or not it was a actual game or if it was a, basically the fourth preseason game before going into the playoffs, but he looked relatively good. Mosby is mainly going to be your special teams guy, so nothing that you can, and maybe it'll give you a little bit of a rotation in the defense. Kelly, we don't know. He was a preferred UDFA. They did bring him in prior on a top 30 visit, so there's something there they like. Sutton is going to be the big one to talk about because he was always viewed as the Packers style pick. Obviously being a rookie, we don't quite know what he's going to do in the league, but there are high hopes on him. And Britton Cox has flashed a lot in his limited role, snaps on defense. He did have a lot of injuries last year, so didn't get to quite see that out of him. But again, I'm not quite... Really, who are you going to get rid of out of this thing to bring in an older guy like Jadeveon Clowney or somebody of that style? Which one are you going to replace with? We don't know what Colin Oliver has, but do you risk cutting his athleticism, and having somebody else pick him up? You're not getting rid of Sorrell. You're not getting rid of Sutton. You're not getting rid of Van Ness. You're not getting rid of Parsons for him. You could say Cox or Mosby, but really I would rather have the 26-year-old Cox than the 30-something Clowney at this point. So that's kind of where I'm setting at with the edge. I don't think it's as big a deal as a lot of other people do at this moment. I just think a lot of people are bored because there's not a lot of Packers news coming out right now, so they had to tear apart certain aspects of the team.
Yeah, so I mean, and the way you can kind of start to, like, if you really want to go big brain on like how does Clowney fit in, is you look at it just from a number standpoint. So we just take Parsons off the board. He's starting the season on PUP. He said it. The team said it. We just scratch him off for now, so he doesn't count against the roster. The two guys, like you said, who are absolute, or really the three who are stone cold locks are Van Ness, Sorrell, and Dennis Sutton, because they don't cut, Goot doesn't cut rookies on contracts, rookie
unless
draft
they're
picks.
like late round, seventh round extra pick or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Oliver is a lottery ticket that, like you said, all reports they like what they saw from him at the end of the season, and they need to see more of him. He's the one where I think he's gonna make it, but they can fudge it where you're like, what position is he actually playing? Especially if he comes through preseason and is like, oh, he's a absolute dynamite wrecker on special teams. Like, if he's starting on at least two of the special teams, like, they're gonna fudge what his position is and make him get on the roster no matter what kind of thing. Then it's like, okay, Cox, Mosby, Nigel Kelly, are any of you showing a pulse? Like, Mosby's kind of answered that he, like you said, he is sort of just a special teams guy at this point. He's a special teams body kind of guy. Cox has flashed. Who knows what he is after the injury he suffered last season? I know he kind of came back later in the season, but I don't think he played too much down the stretch.
And it wasn't really like a terrible, terrible injury. It was a high ankle sprain, so it was a lot more caution than.
Right.
It was an ankle injury, I'm pretty sure of, that kind of went into the groin a little bit, but I don't think it was like it wasn't an ACL tear. It wasn't a major thing like that.
Yeah. And then, like you said, Nigel Kelly, it's like, he has some fun tape. He's a fun, he fits, like you said, they're kind of going more towards the 250. I know he's over 260, but he's one of those kind of more edge bender types at defensive end. But he's an undrafted free agent rookie. He's not a first or second. He's not a day one or day two pick. So there is a route for them to bring a more veteran body type in. But I agree with you that, and the Packers, as they always do, if they had a preference, it would be one of these young guys, the light bulb coming on and taking a step forward. And the one take that I've seen going around that I agree with is, I'm kind of excited to see what Gannon is going to do for that first month of the season when Parsons isn't there, where, how he's going to help these guys generate pass rush. Are we going to see a lot of Van Ness on the interior like he did to start the season? Granted, that was when you had your full complement of him, Parsons, and Gary. You could shift all three of them around and stuff. And you also had Inogbarade last year, too. So I'm really curious, or if Van Ness is going to have to stay on the edge because of, whatever options, or if Wyatt is just really wrecking things on the interior. It's like, okay, like, we'll just figure it out around them. Whatever happens, if it's working the first month, I hope that Gannon isn't like, okay, Parsons is back, I can shelve all that stuff. That's something that you want to see, is the ingenuity honestly go up after Parsons comes back, because the more production you get out of the guys around him, the less Parsons is going to get his numbers. Like, he is that special of a player that he's going to get his, but like, help the guy get his. Don't make him have to like split double and triple teams to get his numbers kind of thing. Like, you can still run all the big brain, galaxy brain stuff with your cheat code player on the field. That is something that I kind of didn't like from Hafley, and I liked a lot of stuff that Hafley did over his 2 seasons, but there was a little too much time where it was like, we're just going straight 4-man rush across because we have Micah Parsons, and it's like, you can be a little bit more, and like, that's why the whole, oh my god, they get some kind of massive play when Parsons drops, because it's like, oh, they did something different, and now opposing offenses are like, oh my god, like, now what? So it's like, yeah, don't shelve the cool stuff when Parsons comes back. Like, it, and like you said, they have to protect the long-term investment and Parsons himself. So it's like, he's going to be on a pitch count, just honestly like he was last year when he came to Green Bay, because he came in with the back issue and stuff. So it's like, don't make him come back off of PUP and have to shoulder the entire load of the pass rush. It's like, help him by doing all the crazy stuff. Like, don't just be, oh, one is back on the field, we can just coast into the, we can coast on vanilla. Like, keep running the Rocky Road and the Cherry Garcia and all that kind of stuff. Like dig deep into the playbook and keep using it. So,
and I think that's why these young guys working with Micah in the offseason has been a real plus, is because they can learn from, obviously a very, very talented star in the NFL, and they can also learn, they can learn his skill set, but they can also learn, okay, if Micah's doing this, then I can go out and do this.
Yep.
They can learn their own spot in the system, even though they don't quite have the full system because, we haven't really had actual practices implementing Gannon's system. But they can know, okay, well, if Mike is over there and I'm over here, I can do this, 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 and this. But if Mike is on my side, then I have to do this, 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 and this. So they're getting an idea of what it's going to be like when it comes time to be in a game situation with Micah.
Yep, completely agree. So, I've got a lot of hopes for this unit, but like you said, we're gonna have our eye on them. We're gonna have our eye on this whole defensive line room going into the first couple preseason games, and that's the thing. I don't expect Lucas to play a lot. I do think Sorrell is gonna play a bunch, though. Like, who do you think is gonna start opposite? I think it's gonna be Sorrell or Cox. I'm really curious because neither Cox's experience, quote unquote experience in the league, doesn't really matter because he's not playing in a system he's played in before. And Sorrell has the higher ceiling, I think. So I do think it'll be between those two to start. But you also want both of them playing well to open the season because you need both of them fieldable so that you can move Lucas around to the interior in sub package so that he can rush from the inside next to Wyatt and stuff. So they're going to need that variety.
I think it's going to depend on what front they're actually going to see. If they're going to see the 3-4 front to start the season, then I think it's going to be Lucas and I think it's going to be Barron. Just because of the body types and stuff like that. If it's more of a 4-3 front, I think you're going to see a little bit more of maybe a Brenton out there starting opposite Lucas. I understand why people are throwing out the Clowney thing because you don't know what that opposite of Lucas is going to be. But they've got enough young guys here that have shown flashes that do you really want to stunt the growth of your younger guys by bringing in that older veteran? I know they're going to be rotating the guy in and out, but you've got to see what you have behind Micah and Lucas. Because let's face it, this is his year 4. They did pick up his 5th-year option, so he's only got 2 more guaranteed years in the system. You've got to be able to know what you have behind him. Is Terrell going to sink or swim? Is Oliver going to do, are they going to put him as a linebacker? Are they going to put him as an edge? What's Sutton going to do? This is Cox's last year in the system. What's he going to do? Is he going to go out like an Igbare where, he's going to put up a little bit of numbers and then just take the next big next contract that he can get with another team? So I do think that it's possibly going to be a Van Ness Sorrell tandem to start the season.
Yeah, so like I said, this position group's going to have our eye on it, but I'm really excited to see what they're able to do. And as you noted, no one else has signed Clowney at this point. If all these guys don't, it's kind of the same as the defensive tackle room. At least there is some kind of answer in the free agent market where it's like you can find some vets out there. So obviously the preference is Sorrell takes a leap. Oliver is able to show you he does belong in the NFL. Cox is a steady contributor, really for the first time in his career. If those things, if 2 of those 3 come to fruition, this room looks way better. And then obviously you're getting Parsons back, a month into the season. So, but if you get 1 or none of those things, it's like, oh, okay, better go call Jadeveon and say like, hey, you want to come to Green Bay and see what it's like out here? So,
well, it's not even like you said. Jadeveon's not even the only one out there at the moment.
Right.
You got Hassan Reddick that's out there. Joey Bosa, even though I'm not really wanting him on the team, could be somebody that they could pick up. Leonard Floyd is about the same age as Jadeveon, could be out there. Uh, Bilal Nichols was in Arizona last year. He could be a pickup. Old man Von Miller's still out there. Tyquan Lewis. There are guys out there. Hell, you could even go and pick up Marcus Davenport, who Packer fans know very well because of him being in Detroit, but also because he's the guy the Saints traded up for, and they got the extra draft pick out of. There are guys out there that they could theoretically pick up to be a veteran, just pure pass rusher. So it's not like when they start the season, there's not a chance that if Sorrell sinks or one of these other guys sinks, they don't have options to pick up. And then you got to look at there's always going to be somebody that gets released at the end of cut down.
Yep. Completely agree. So, yeah, like I said, we're just trying to give you guys different avenues to approach this training camp from. Want to just stay on the defensive side of the ball and move back off the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and finish out defense because I think we've pretty well touched on the whole linebacker situation in last episode and previous episodes when we talked about the Isaiah McDuffie extension. Yeah. So really, there's nothing more that we can top on there. Obviously, your starters are going to be Edge and Zaire. Tyron's got to take a leap. You do have the two Iowa guys in Neiman and Welch that are probably going to be more of your special teamers, spot starters if need be. McDuffie is going to be your backup with Hopper. And then you got TJ Quinn, who was a premium
UDFA signing. Yeah.
Yeah. So really there's not much more we can talk on that. The big question is going to be, and I don't think we need to talk safety because safety is pretty well established what's going on there. They do have a couple of guys in there that could be interesting and make Katan Oladapo's life a little bit difficult, but there's not much more that we can talk in there. But yeah, we can talk corner and finish out the defense.
Yep. So, all things being equal, if the Packers really could choose how they want this to play out, I would have to, I can't speak for them, but obviously they want Cisse to be a starter. But if you're looking totally towards the future, the outcome you want is Domani Jackson comes in and steals the other starting spot too, because then it's like, okay, we can just continue to move on from everyone in this corner, every returning player in this cornerback room moving forward. You don't have to play tackling roulette with Valentine, who has been a really solid to really good cover guy, but couldn't tackle. He couldn't tackle a stack of hay if it came and landed on him, and I'm just totally done with the Nixon experiment at this point.
Well, here's the question to throw out to you. Who's starting week 1?
It's probably Nixon and Cisse.
You think so? I was thinking the other way. I think it was going to be Nixon and St. Just. I think that they want to try to slow roll Cisse unless Cisse comes out in preseason and just absolutely dominates everything.
Yeah, part of the Cisse thing is that's me, I don't want to say, not necessarily projecting, but, wish casting a little bit, because that's your ideal, is your top pick is able to come in and secure a starting spot off the bat. That's, that's what you're always hoping for, and especially at a position where, not that it's easy, but in terms of, translating play from college to the NFL, corner is one of them where it's yes, you need to learn the nuances of route combos and all that kind of stuff, but there isn't a huge physical leap you need to make. It's if you can run with guys, you can run with guys kind of thing. So that's sort of where I want. And I'm still not sold on exactly what they signed St. Just for, whether it was primarily for his special teams prowess or if they really expect him to be a contributor at corner. I can see it. I can definitely see it. And like you said, on one hand, yes, you want to see Cisse, your top pick, contribute early, but the Packers are also notorious for bringing guys along at at a I don't want to say slow pace, but a measured pace to make sure like he's not gonna just blow a coverage every other or every third or fourth snap kind of thing. Like that is the fear, is like you call student body left coverage and he's, you got 10 guys rolling coverage one way and your rookie is the one guy rolling it the wrong way kind of thing. So I agree. Like I can see it, but I am wish casting a little that Cisse is starting week 1. But hey, if we're gonna go that route, I'll split the difference with you, Cisse and St. Just. Like I said, I am just that over the Nixon experiment because like.
Oh, I am completely.
But I know exactly where you're coming from, and I do agree with some of the thought, a lot of the thought process. You're coming to your potential starting duo.
That, but if you go by what a lot of people have said about St. Just based off of his PFF grades, he was highly ranked last year with the Chargers. So, do they believe that's the type of guy that they just signed? Or did they give him that money just to be a core special teamer? I don't think that's possible. I think they signed him to be the guy opposite Nixon until they can fully believe Cisse is going to take over, or Damani Jackson. Who knows? It's going to be one of those things where they do slow roll him unless they have to. Even with Jair, they pretty well slow rolled him until they absolutely had to start him out there. Unless, again, like one of Cisse or Jackson goes out and just completely dominates everything in the preseason. If they come out of preseason and Cisse's got 5 pass breakups and 3 interceptions with, 10 tackles, are you going to really say that he can't be starting?
Right. So, yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's going to play out the way it's going to play out, but like I said, I've got my hopes on where it'll go, but you're probably right that they go with the more veteran players to kind of.
And I completely agree with you with the Nixon thing. I kind of wish that they would have shipped him off to Miami with Halfley, but they didn't. I do kind of hope he does hold out and Cisse just fucking goes off, and then they can say, well, you can hold out for as long as you want. We don't need you.
Yeah.
And go from there. But I and just looking at this, I've never really done a deep dive into Nixon, but he's 5'10", 200 pounds. That goes way outside of what the Packers' norms are for a corner. So, well, kind of. 5'10" is like borderline for them. And so, yeah, whatever. But other than that, I agree. I've always liked Carrington, but he just can't tackle to save his life. But he's still, only 24 years old. St. Just, like I said, I don't think they gave him the money just to, and they didn't give him a ton of money, but I don't see them giving him a contract just to be a core special teamer.
It wasn't, like you said, it wasn't just a vet minimum, like, for a guy to only be a special teams guy. Like, yeah, there was some buttressing duty they expected out of him in some degree. So I agree with you there.
Then you got Haddon, who's probably going to end up on the pup, but they really do like him. Devonshire, I don't know too much on. We did kind of talk about him and Marlon Jones last time. Those two could be wild cards for the roster. Jalen Simpson, I think he's the one that nobody can decide whether he's going to be a corner or if he's going to be a safety.
Right.
And then you got Shamar Bartholomew, who, he's definitely a long shot for the roster unless, again, he goes off and just has like amazing preseason.
Yep. So we'll have to see on that one. I guess that, like you said, it puts a bow on the defensive side of the ball. Unless there's any other position, but no, that's all of them. I realized that it's all of them.
Yeah, that's. I
We
mean,
touched the-
like I said, safety is pretty well set. We know it's going to be McKinney, Williams, and Bullard, with Catan probably as the backup there. We've already really talked to linebackers last episode.
Yep.
So yeah, that's pretty well all the defense.
All right, and we'll just move to the other line of scrimmage and offensive line. So there's just question marks across this whole starting front. Some bigger than others. To me, one of the ones that's not getting talked up enough is how long into the season does it take Zach Tom to be Zach Tom? I think the reports are he's gonna start. He's gonna be ready for week 1, but it is just one to keep an eye on because patellar tendon operations tend to be ones that have lingering effects long term for guys where they can come back pretty good, but they're not necessarily as good as they were pre-injury. So that'll be one that I'm keeping my eye on is how long will it take for Zach Tom to look like Zach Tom, or does it turn into oh no, is he ever going to be Zach
Or
Tom
does
again
he
kind
even
of thing?
start the season? Does he end up on PUP to start the season?
Right.
You know?
And like you said, we'll find out around the time when this episode is released. So unfortunately, we can't see into the future. We're just extrapolating a little bit.
And if I could see into the future, it wouldn't be to see that; it'd be to see the freaking lotto numbers.
You and me both. Opposite tackle position. What kind of play are you getting out of Jordan Morgan? At base value, you just got to be better than whatever the hell Rasheed Walker was doing in the second half of that playoff game. Like, I know that bar is not very high off the ground, but you just have to be not the worst possible option out of 32 starters. You have to be better than that at left tackle. If that can be his floor and he just makes incremental progress through the season, that's an absolute win for the Packers at left tackle. Obviously, they have much higher expectations for Morgan. They just need stability off the top at left tackle, and then it can kind of go from there. Banks is looking to prove that his rough play last season was due to the fact that he had like 4 injuries in the first month and a half of the season. I thought he did play better as the year went along, but it still wasn't great at the end. But here's
And
to
they
hoping
must
that
be something, being that they restructured his contract and pretty much guaranteed he was going to be on the roster for the next year or two.
yeah. So it's a matter of like, does playing on a not flat tire, because I think the foot and the ankle injury were on the same leg, or the what did he have, a knee and an ankle or a foot, whatever it was. He had 2 injuries, and I think they were both to the same leg. So, you would like to think that it would be better moving forward. Going at center, it's kind of just a may the best man win, between Ryan and Burton.
Well, no, I'm going to ask you this because
Okay.
you know these guys a little bit better than I do, and obviously they're friends of show and all that. But J.J. Leahy and Jake the Lemon Shavank both absolutely hate Jacob Monk. And I don't get the hate on him. They call him undersized, but he's really not. I mean, he's a listed 6'3", 308. That's pretty typical for a center. I can't say I've seen him in extended play because they've not really used him for much unless they absolutely had to. Why is it a foregone conclusion that he couldn't possibly be the center of the future?
I just think at this point, it's a matter of he just doesn't have enough snaps. Like, he can't get enough first team snaps at this point. And it's honestly kind of on the Packers. Like, yes, it's partly on him for not, like, seizing whatever opportunities got and been a dynamite player, but I put this in the same bin as, like, the Derek Sherrod situation,
I can't do the Sherrod situation because Sherrod is completely...
I put it in that sense where it's like, you draft a guy for a certain spot, and it's like the first thing you do is like, let's play him at all these different spots. You know, the Sherrod story is like, this guy was supposed to be your left tackle of the future, and the first thing they do is like, let's play him at guard, a position he had never played before.
And they did that with Bulaga too.
True, but and I understand that there's a way we do things, but it's like, and with Bulaga, there was some question of like, is he gonna stick at tackle in the NFL? Whereas with like Sherrod, it's like that's an NFL tackle kind of thing and stuff. And I do wonder sometimes if their preference if the Packers' preference for versatility hurts them in these spots where it's like, instead of just saying, Jacob Monk, you're going to get all the center 2 snaps your whole time in Green Bay, and, you know, you might get some center 1 snaps when, you know, if Myers is out or whatever, or, you know, when Jenkins holds in and stuff like that. But it's like, no, we're going to, like, 50-50 or worse snap. Because where I do agree with Shavink and Leahy is, like, you're wasting time with Monk at guard because he is small for a guard. It's kind of like when they tried to play Zach Tom at guard as a rookie, where it was like, I like all the things he does, but he's just so light at guard for the NFL. And that was a problem with Morgan too, is it's like, I know the arm length was such a question, but it was like, I just don't think he has enough sand in his pants to survive at guard. And you've seen it with Monk at guard, where he just gets mauled at the point of attack when they try to play him there. Same with Morgan, same with even Zach Tom. And like, I get it, like, they have this thing that they like to play guys in multiple spots, but it's like, when you've got a guy like Monk who, yeah, he played some guard at Duke, but that was kind of more out of necessity than it was out of, like, preference. It's like, just let these guys play the position that they're, like, built to and best suited for. I agree with you that he's fine build-wise for a center, but I at this point, my whole thing is, like, has the train left the station, like, not even this offseason, but the offseason before, where I just think that you need to prescribe as many snaps to both Ryan and Burton to give them a fair shake at duking out for the center 1 spot. I just don't think Monk has enough snaps to make up time unless one of those guys gets injured. And even then, it's like, are they going to bother giving Monk a shot, or are they just going to, you know, give all those surplus snaps to the other guy who was in the competition? So it remains to be seen. I liked Monk as a center prospect, but my worry is, like, he's just out of time at this point. Like, they've drafted over him, and Ryan has been signed over him at his best position, and Ryan's not going back to guard at this point, in my opinion. Burton might, let me throw this, but yeah.
I was just going to throw this addendum to it. Is it a foregone conclusion that Burton is the center of the future, or could he be the guard that replaces an Aaron Banks?
I was gonna say that, or if Belton falters, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was the hope, and why, you know, as I say all those things, and it's like, well, then why haven't they cut or traded Monk? The reason they haven't is because Burton is big enough to play all 3 of the interior positions, and he is good at all of them. So that is Monk's, like, I don't want to say last gasp, because he's still got 2 more years on his rookie contract, but time is running out for him.
Secret, though?
What?
Burton's only got 1 inch and 4 pounds over Monk.
Yeah, so, you know, these are all but, you know, it's not just weight, it is like strength too and stuff like that. And, you know, Monk, but that's the thing, is like, centers aren't supposed to anchor the same way a guard has to. And it was why, you know, one of the things we talked about in the middle of last season is, it's like, okay, like, Morgan, he better be able to play tackle, or he's gonna have to learn how to play center, because he can't play guard. And like, and Morgan is listed at what, like 315 or something like that.
Let's see what he's got here, because I got the roster pulled up.
Yeah, I know. I'm scrolling down.
6'5", 311. So he's only got 3 pounds over Monk.
But he gets rolled back the same way and stuff. So, yeah, you know, it's not just a straight like this guy is 320 so he can play on the interior kind of thing. Because
the only reason I
yeah.
keep throwing that out is because I do listen to JJ and Jake's podcast, and they just keep talking about, well, he's too undersized, he's this, he's that. But really, like I said, when you start lining him up against some of these other people, he's not that. I mean, if you go against Anthony Belton, yeah, he's definitely undersized because Belton's 6'6", 336 listed. But then you look at like Brant Banks, who the Packers seem to love because they've brought him back a number of times, 6'7", 306. So really the only thing he's got over Monk is the height. Travis Glover, 6'6", 317, so he's got height on him and a little bit of weight. And so I've never really watched Monk to be able to say, yeah, this is the issue he's having, but when they keep saying, or like this guy, Carson Barnhart, they have on the roster, might know him a little bit because he's a Michigan guy, 6'4", 306, and they've got him listed as a guard. So, it always, when they start talking about how much they dislike Monk, I'm at a loss because it's like we don't know what he's capable of because we've never seen him in extended time. I think even last year with the preseason, we didn't see a lot out of him because he was dealing with some kind of injury, if I remember right.
Yeah. And that was a real bummer for him because he needed those snaps. It's like I said, especially when Jenkins was holding in, like he was the guy who would have benefited from that time at center the most. And like I said, I wouldn't give up on him because I really liked him coming out of Duke as a center, but I just worry that like I said, he's had a free agent extended over him, and he's had a more highly touted draft pick come in over him in Burton. But there are a few, sliding doors potential, and it is, what does Banks do and what does Belton do, who is the last guy we need to talk about. Because if either of those guys falter, Burton is the guy who's first man up to replace either of those guys. So, Belton, like I said, that's the last one of a guy who they're expecting, hoping to make big gains in this offseason. And I do think, I find it hilarious that the team is still listing him as a tackle on the roster when he's penciled in as your starting right guard if the season were to start tomorrow. I know that none of those things really matter,
might all
but
depend on what Zach Tom's
that's true. Right.
Physical comes out as tomorrow.
Yep. So again, like there are multiple deck chairs that have not been bolted. Forget bolted down. They're not even set. There's not like a sunspot or like a dust trail of where they've been put in place for an extended period of time, kind of thing. So, I'm really curious we're not going to know the whole because Zach's not going to play in the preseason game. He's just not going to. He might play like one series, but he's not going to play in the preseason.
It might be one series, but he might get some snaps just because knock the rust off or something.
Right.
See, kind of like a not so much that they did it with Bakhtiari, but except for during the week one that he finally did come back and play against the Bears. But something like, okay, we're going to throw you out there for this many snaps just to see how the knee holds up. Are you retaining any fluid in the knee? Are you having any pains? Are you having any of this? That way, if it comes week one,
right,
it's not a guessing game with Zach Tom. They can say, all right, well, you're setting out for this. We're going to roll with Belton as our tackle.
Yep. So, like you said, it's sort of like a dress rehearsal, which is really what preseason is supposed to be. But yeah, behind the starters, I can't say that any of those guys really. I don't want to say they don't matter, but whoever loses the center battle is gonna be. That's the thing, though, is like you'd obviously prefer. I guess you'd prefer Burton to start because projecting forward, you want him to be your center of the future. But also, like I said, I don't think they're moving Ryan off center if he loses the starting center battle, because last season, after 2024, he looked like he was doing better towards the back half of the season. 25, the first half was just a disaster class for Ryan at guard, and I just think that experiment is over with. And so yeah, like, do they kind of pencil in Ryan as the starter, and like Burton would almost have to lap him to take the starting spot? I don't know.
I see it similar to the Lane Taylor Elton Jenkins situation.
That's a good
Where
point. Yeah.
They brought back Lane Taylor on like a 2-year contract. He was the de facto starter, but ended up getting hurt, which slotted in Jenkins, and Jenkins just ran away with it. So I would have to think Ryan is the starter, and if anything happens to him, whether it's an injury or, he starts sucking up, missing snaps, stuff like that, then it would move to Burton, and Burton could run away with it.
And I guess like the guy that I'm interested, the two guys that I'm interested in watching this season are 2024 preseason darling Donovan Jennings. See if there's anything there, or if he's getting cut this, because he just had a bad season last year. And the other one is
Go ahead. I'll let you finish your second one.
Oh, okay, and then the other one is the guy that we never got to see play last year, the one draft pick who they've like kept despite not seeing it all, in John Williams, who, they obviously drafted for some kind of reason, and they've kept him around after spending the whole season on IR, or whichever one it was. I know they kind of activated him late in the season, but he never played. And so yeah, like I'm just curious to see what he does moving inside to guard this season.
Well, I was just going to say that's the interesting part. There is no slash to it. He is just listed straight up as guard. But I think Jennings is going to have a hard time. He is 26 right now, which isn't old, but they brought in a couple of premier UDFAs that I know Mafia has been really high on Dylan Wade and said he's probably the guy that is the one that's going to make the roster as a UDFA. But then you got Geske out of Illinois.
Geske's the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then you've got Dylan Barrett from Iowa State, even though he's a Cyclone. You can't trust Cyclones that people have talked up pretty good at the guard position. And then, like I said, you've got that Barnhart from Michigan. He's first-year player, whatever you want to call him. So I think it's going to be hard for Jennings because he's going to have a lot of competition. Williams, I think, could possibly pass through the waiver system and end up on the practice squad if they do cut him at the end of camp, just because there's, like you said, there's nothing on him to say, we want this guy. And I don't think teams are going to be lining up to pick him up without any kind of information on him. So, yeah, that's going to be a tight battle for that backup guard position. And I got to have a feeling that Jennings is in the back of the line at the moment.
Oh, the one guy that we totally forgot to mention. I actually. And, we were kind of talking about, does Belton move aside? I don't think he does, because we still have Kennard. I totally forgot we still have Kennard.
We can't do that, because Kennard is tight end, too.
Ah!
And he's not going to have a chance to play tight end. Tackle. He's going to be tight end, too.
Oh, you're right. Alas. But, anyone else you wanted to put the spotlight on at offensive line, or...
I was looking through a couple of them. I've been scrolling up and down the roster just trying to...
Dalton Cooper is the other guy that I liked when they signed him out of Oklahoma State last season, so I'm kind of curious to see how he looks this year, second year in the system.
Travis Glover is another one that gets talked bad about a lot, and I don't think he did as terrible as a lot of people. It was pretty rough for him to go in as a first-year player from a small school and have to play any kind of meaningful snaps in the regular season the year before last.
Much less go into the playoff game where no one was playing good and everyone was getting injured against the Eagles, who were primed to win the Super Bowl. So yeah, like,
Yeah, so
I don't have a real thing either way with him, but yeah, I was like, they weren't gonna, if they happen to find like, oh my god, he actually was really good, like, why were the other guys starting over him the whole season, kind of thing. So like, whoever they put in was gonna be in a lose-lose situation no matter what in that scenario.
right. And the interesting thing I see about him listed on the Packers side is they have him at 317. So I'm wondering if he dropped some weight, because if I remember right, when
he was like
drafted,
330
he was
coming out. He was a
Yeah.
big boy coming out. Still
so
is,
he
obviously.
must have dropped some weight. Well, yeah, he's 6'6". There's no doubt about it. He's a big old bear. But, I'm not completely... Let's put it this way. If you're not getting any kind of meaningful snaps, it's hard to judge what kind of player you're going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to poo-poo on anybody until we see meaningful snaps out of them.
Yep.
The reason I can poo-poo guys like Nixon is because we've seen enough meaningful snaps out of him to know there's not much there. Luke Musgrave. I can poo-poo Luke Musgrave because we've seen enough meaningful snaps out of him to say that guy.
He's a one-trick pony. It's unfortunate, but he's a one-trick pony. And
unless he all of a sudden puts it all together this camp and stays healthy and really comes out and shows that he was worth that second-round pick, like he was starting his rookie year until injuries started taking, lacerated kidney and shit like that. So, but anyway, back to the tackle talk. I'm not going to give up on Glover until they finally cut him and don't bring him back on the practice squad. And because they must have saw something in him to draft him. And now this is year 3 for him. So for them to keep him around, they saw something. So I'm not completely against him.
Yep. So our last position group to really go over is running back. I know we touched on it lightly because we did address the Jacobs situation, but it's really the only other position that we didn't go deep into, because we did really go deep into quarterback, receiver, and tight end in the last episode we did together. So running back. So again, as we noted at the end of our last episode together, the Jacobs situation, as is right now, he's your starting running back. We will continue to cover that as, new information comes out. Until then, that's your starter, your bell cow, whatever label you want. He's going to get, 70% of your carries and stuff. We'll see. He spent all of last season dinged up, and it really bit the team in the ass from both, just the running production, but also how LaFleur structured his offense to be so, run it, and run it again in frankly, too much of the season. And behind Jacobs, it's a whole lot of
question marks.
yeah. So the most firm thing is that Chris Brooks is the best pass protecting option in the backfield. That's the certain thing, and that he's gonna make bread's in the oven. Sorry.
I was like, am I having a stroke here? I hear noises.
No. Marisol's making focaccia, so I'm very excited. So the one certainty is that Chris Brooks is making this roster because of the contract they gave him, and because, just watch a lot of the secondary reaction, deep route passing plays last season. You're gonna see 30 making some absurd pass pro pickups on those plays. He's making the roster, but what is he giving you?
And I will give him he does have a little bit of juice in
especially when he's the last option check down guy. It's and he catches the ball wide open.
He had a few good rushes because he's more of a contact driven rusher.
Right.
So I'm not going to poo-poo him completely as just a pure pass blocker. He has ability, but is he going to be able to be a reliable number 2 option if Jacobs is suspended or is not on the roster anymore?
Right. That's the thing, is he's Tony Fisher.
Yeah.
I really liked Tony Fisher in the early 2000s, but it's like once that '05 season came around and Tony Fisher had to be. Well, see, I didn't know that. I'm 5,000 miles away. But the player, I like the player. But like once he had to be RB2 or RB1, like that fell off real quick, and then he got injured too. And as you kind of noted, it's like Brooks is really good when he's in his niche role, but outside of that, it's kind of like, okay, how much of the, how much production can he really soak up if Jacobs is, like you said, suspended, cut, if the worst should come out, or if it's just a repeat of last season where Jacobs is dealing with 4 nagging injuries again, and you need more out of your backups.
So I have to say this because I don't know Tony personally. I don't know anything like that. I've heard things about him. I did have one experience with him that he probably didn't like me afterwards. And I know we want to kind of end this episode quick, but I want to tell this story because I love this story. So this is my first game that I've been up to since I was like 12. It was 2014, the Atlanta Falcons game. Before the Saturday before the games, they usually always had alumni in there signing autographs and all that stuff. Well, that weekend it was Boyd Dowler and Marv Fleming. I'd never done one of these alumni signings before at all, so I had no clue what was going on. But a friend of mine had asked me if I could get Marv to sign something for Dolphins-wise because he was on the perfect season Dolphins. I said, okay, well, yeah, I don't know how this works, so I'll go ahead and give it a try. So I went up there, I got Boyd Dowler, met Boyd Dowler, got a signature from him, move over to Marv Fleming, and I had 2 things, I set them down. Tony Fisher was the head of the Alumni Association at that point, so he was the one that was putting together the alumni stuff. And he gets all hot and bothered that, 1 item per person and this, and I was like, I have no, and he's just having this fit, and I go, Marv, if you're only going to sign 1, then can you do this? But can you at least do the 19-0 thing on it? No personal. And Tony's no personalization. And I mean, he's getting hot and bothered over this. It's like, hey man, I had no clue. I've never done this before. Marv looks at me and goes, I guess it's your lucky day. Sign both of them. Put the 19-0 on the one. So I don't think Tony Fisher was happy with me that day. But yeah.
Come on, Joe, move it along. But no, I understand your point of view, and it is a good story. But Chris Brooks, we're just asking you to be a little better than that. But like I said, it is nice that out of Brooks, you're getting some level of certainty out of it. Like you know that you're getting good ROI, at least as a pass protector. And like you said, there's some he has some shake, he has some power as a runner and stuff. He's good as a lead blocker too. When you saw when LaFleur kind of pulled some stuff out in or that there's a lot of versatility it provided you there. I'm just not sure how much dynamics he's giving you as the ball carrier. The 2 guys that you're hoping to see something out of this offseason in that regards behind Jacobs and Brooks is the international man of mystery Marshawn Lloyd and Damian Martinez. So Lloyd, heard, you're hearing a lot of the similar things you heard about Watson 2 years ago, where it's like he went to see all the same specialists that Watson did. They think they've got the hamstring thing figured out. I know some people are irritated by it, but I do appreciate that. Like, the team is like, yes, we think he figured it out, but we're still going to approach it with kid gloves because why test our luck again, kind of thing? Why test our and his luck?
If I'm Marshawn Lloyd, this is how I would show up tomorrow for physicals. I would look like the kid from Little Giants with all the foam padding wrapped, duct taped around the arms and everything. That's how I would walk into tomorrow's physical.
No, the way because his is all soft tissue injuries. I'm just like, I'm wearing this red non-contact jersey. Like, I'm borrowing one of the quarterback ones. And because if you look at how I know he's had like some he strained a hamstring here or there, but his 2 like big injuries that he's had his rookie year and last year is because he's just gotten tackled really awkwardly on like some the irony with him is like he makes these receptions, especially last year's one against the Colts, where it's like there's no one who's coming out of the backfield and making that catch, and then he gets tackled from behind where the guy like not just pulls him down. Yeah, he not just pulls him down, but then he also like rolls into Marshawn's leg, and like it was one of those where he got tackled on the Packers sideline, so like you don't see him like get up or go off the field because I think the med staff kind of just pulls him off like a wounded soldier off the battlefield kind of thing, and they just kind of yank him onto the sideline. But if I'm Lloyd, I'm like, I'll do all the drills, I'll do all the running, all that kind of stuff, but it's like, do not touch me. And I know that you have to go through contact and stuff, but like at least through the first half, I'm like, just don't touch me. Like,
and I think they've been pretty smart with him, where you know they limit the number of
reps,
he has during practices. So, and I think that was much to the chagrin of some Packers fans when they saw that, where that first practice he went out and had this amazing practice, and then they immediately shut him down and said no more. It's like, well, yeah, I can understand that, but he has had some bad luck injuries where, you know, that first season he just come back from the hamstring and then ended up with appendicitis, and you know had to have his appendix removed. So it's really not much you can do there. Than last year, like you said, with the bad tackle, but you got to roll with what you can. I'm more excited to see what this Damian Martinez is all about, because that's the one that I keep hearing a lot of things about.
Really talented guy.
Yeah, you got Jaden Nixon as the UDFA this year. I haven't heard a lot about him, and I don't remember Sarah talking about him in our running back episode, which is weird because he is the UCF guy. I think she talked about the other one, but not Nixon per se.
Yeah, because Nixon was kind of like the change of pace guy to the other. I'm totally blanking on the other guy's name, but
I'm blanking on the other one. Sorry, Sarah. And then you got Pierre Strong, who is in year 4 at 27 years old,
and I don't think can be on the practice squad anymore at this point.
Yeah,
I
he
think
might be done on the practice squad.
So I think. I just think he's a cap body at this point because he can't be on the practice squad. I can't see them keeping him unless Armageddon happens and, you know, Jacobs is cut, Lloyd gets injured, Nixon proves that he's nothing, and then, like, you're, like, stuck retaining Martinez on upside, Brooks because of the contract, and it's like, well, Lloyd's on IR again, and then, I guess we have to keep Strong because he knows the playbook, kind of like out of necessity kind of thing. So that's the only way I can see Strong making the roster, is like a cacophony of unfortunate events would have to take place for him to make this roster.
Now, in that sense, there are a couple of guys currently in the free agent pool that I would have no problems bringing in just to see what they have. You know, Najee Harris has been looking really great in a lot of the videos that he's been posting. I wouldn't be against bringing him on a 1-year deal just to see what he has. Your boy Hassan Haskins, you know, he's young enough that, you know, why not bring him in just to see what he can do. This is talking over Pierre. This isn't as the number one guy on the roster instead of Jacobs. These are just guys that, you know, I wouldn't mind bringing in just to see, hey, can we get by with him? Nick Chubb is the same boat as Najee, that they're both looking good in their workout videos.
Antonio Gibson is one who might intrigue LaFleur because he has some pass catching ability.
I just read something today or yesterday that said that Mixon is pretty much saying he's done. So that's there's no bringing him in, but there's guys like that. And then of course you got all the UDFAs that are still out there that you could say, hey, you know, give me this because we know if we see what we like and we can get them on the practice squad. Whereas, like you said, I don't think Pierre Strong can go back on the practice squad.
Yeah, all things being, and like you, and one more outside of the box one is like if Emmanuel Wilson doesn't make the roster in Seattle, that's a quick phone call for Gutekunst to make. But I think all things being equal, I don't know if they're going to keep 3 or 4 running backs this season. It kind of depends, who of the tight ends
Depends
makes
on
it.
who shows out.
Right. And so, like, if I think the ideal for this room is they're forced to keep 4 because Martinez plays to his upside, Lloyd stays healthy, and if he stays healthy, they're going to keep him on the roster. Jacobs is. Whether it's at the end of the process hasn't played out yet, or it does fully play out and is found, to be absolved of a lot of the worst parts of what's it called, the indictments that he was arrested on, that he turned himself in on. If a lot of those are proven to be not true, and he's around. And then Brooks, like I said, because of the contract, they're keeping 4 because those 4 outcomes have happened. And then Nixon is the guy that you're like, we can sneak him through to the practice squad. So I'd say the percentages are more likely they keep 3 because, again, when do they ever bat 1,000 on these kind of things? And it's some combination of those 4. But I do think the hope is that Nixon can be snuck through. Because you watch his highlight film, and his RAS isn't great. Like, there's nothing special about him athletically or physically build-wise. He's honestly kind of small for a running back. But you do see some, like, Aaron Jones light out of him in terms of, like, the kind of runner he is, the kind of receiving option he is. I think he's a more natural pass catcher than Jones was or is. So, and he has some, like, kick return ability and things like that. So, some special teams ability never hurts when you're that low on the rung. But really, in camp, all eyes are on, is Lloyd gonna stay healthy, and what does Damian Martinez show behind our hodgepodge back? And that's always the hard part too in preseason. It's just like, what O-line is Green Bay putting out there? And if he produces, it's like, oh, that's pretty good because we don't think too highly of our backup, our deep reserve options on the O-line. So if Martinez is able to produce, great. That's a really good sign for, his upside as a player. Because at his best, he's sort of Jacobs-esque, where he's like, he's taller than Jacobs, but he's just kind of like a bowling ball guy who just keeps falling and moving forward. I'm not super plugged into like the off-field Oregon State Miami chatter. I had heard some around the periphery that that the very stereotypical about any, not just football player but athletes, like he may have an overinflated ego on like who he is as a player and all that kind of stuff. But the physical talent is on film.
Doesn't?
Yeah, I know. Like you can't succeed in professional sports without that, but. If you just based on his highlight film alone, there's a lot to like what's on film from Martinez at Oregon State and at Miami. So that's a guy that I would like to see make the roster just because he has a lot of physical talents oozing out of him. But any other thoughts you got?
No, I think we can wrap up. I do want to throw out there, thank you for everybody who tuned in for the open scripted and the Star Wars trivia stuff, and that we will be doing the finals here probably this next week just because we had vacations and everything else to kind of go around. But thank you for all the guests. Thank you for everybody who tuned in for that. We are going to be focusing in more on our Packer stuff going forward. So thank you for everything. If you have any suggestions about how to change it up next year, be sure to drop anything. If you like what we did, if you want to hear more of something else, if you have guest recommendations, I'm always looking for that. I also want to throw out there that it's possible that I could keep doing the unscripted going forward, even during our Packer stuff. If you want to hear like an interview once a month or whatever, let me know. I can get some stuff scheduled and all that things. But other than that, Mike has finally got to get off his vacation and get back to full-time podcasting. So thanks everybody for tuning in for that and being along for the ride.
And yeah, thank you, Joe, for keeping this thing afloat and rolling while I enjoyed my time off in the off season. But like you said, we're back, and that means football is back at this point. So for Iowa Joe, I'm Mike. Please check us out on the socials at Ohana_Packers on Twitter, at Ohana Packers Edition on Instagram. As Joe has, I know, preached on all the shows, please give us a follow on Facebook so we can do our drawing. We're going to do that once we hit 100 followers on Facebook. Want to do that so if we ever live stream, we're live streaming to Facebook as well as to YouTube. Follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Please give us a like and a subscribe. Questions, comments, thoughts, whatever, send them into us. We want to create the content you're looking for. We turn the page one more time. By the time we're recording our next episode, we'll know who's on PUP, what the Packers are doing. First practices should have started at that point, so we'll have some reaction to that. But until then, for Iowa Joe, I'm Mike Kawano. Go Pack Go, and aloha!
Packers fans out here to stay. Cheeseheads green and gold all day. Jordan Love lead us to the bay. Every game we find a way. Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for all, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for all, you know. Green and gold gonna glow. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown.